This is part 2 of the Tommy Allsup interview.
I think so. I haven't heard anybody complain. No, that's fine. That's fine. I talk better than anything I do, so I don't mind it. But anyhow, getting back to, he said I got the winter dance party coming up, and he didn't seem to be worried about the weather nor he just, it was another tour to him. We were playing small venues. Hang on, I got a cough again. They were small venues, and they were like dance show dances, and but I think he probably was needing some money, and at least they've played that up real big that he was broke, and well, he wasn't broke. He had all the talent, and he had a trunk full of songs, but maybe he was needing some cash, and yeah, I know exactly what we were getting. Well, it's well known. I mean, it's documented. He was getting $2,500 a week for 6 shows, and out of that, he was paying me $250. He was paying Waylon $200, and he was paying Carl $150, and that was it. Back in those days, of course, you could buy a new Chevrolet back then for $2,100. So it doesn't seem like a lot of money now, but it was a lot of money at the time. Well, the reward was coming later. I think a lot of the reason he went on the tour was to stay in good graces with Irving Fale, where he could be his manager and guide his career. I think that was in the back of his head, because we talked about that every day. Like, this is going to happen, this is going to happen, and this is going to loosen up, and we're going to do this and that. And it was all based on the fact that they were going to be his managers. Well, but we put a bass in his hand, and Buddy said, "You're going to play bass," so he became a bass player. He was really a bass holder, and then I taught him some kind of a short. I said, if you'll just think about it as your guitar, Waylon, just think of those notes, those bass notes, you'll get by. And so he did. Waylon had never. I taught him, like I said, just think about you playing your guitar on the bass strings of your guitar, picking the bass strings in whatever key you're in, and just pretend you're playing a guitar, and think of that. Think of it as a guitar rather than the bass, the big 4 strings on a guitar. He would do good, except he'd forget the keys, and I'd have to tell him. And in all the pictures taken on all those shows, the pictures have shown up. I'm looking at Waylon, and people say, "You weren't looking out at the crowd, you was always looking at Waylon." And my answer was, well, I was probably telling him the changes to the songs, So, and I feel like I was, because I had to tell him every night just about, Frankie Sardo would open up the show, and then Dion and the Belmonts would come on, and then Richie Valens would perform, and then Big Bopper, and then Buddy Holly. Buddy ended he was like the final act each night, and Buddy had the only really part of the show that was more than 3 or 4 songs. Frankie Sardo, I think he only did a couple, 3 songs, and Dion and the Belmonts only did 3 or 4 or 5, and the Big Bopper didn't do many more than that, and Richie had probably a half a dozen at the most, and we'd end up probably doing 12, 15 songs each night. The backing band was Waylon, me, and Carl. We backed everybody on the show, yeah, the 3 of us. And when the Bopper came out, well, we had a saxophone player out of Chicago would come out and work with a Bopper. And then when Frankie Sardo sang, we had a trumpet player from Chicago, and we'd have it like a trumpet and sax, because he was kind of a Bobby Darin type act, Other than that, well, the 4 of us backed all that people, Or the 3 of us, really, just 3 guys, And we didn't know that until we got to Chicago. When we started that tour, we left New York City on a train coming to Chicago, and we got to Chicago to the rehearsal hall, and the guy, one of the promoter, the road manager, said, "Hey, I need you guys to come over an hour early today because you got to rehearse with some of the other people." And Buddy said, "What the hell are you talking about?" He said, "Well, we got to have a backup band, and some band they had hired didn't show, or maybe they didn't have them hired, probably didn't, So we had ended up backing up everybody. So no, wasn't nothing said about extra money. No, he didn't. No, he didn't have to get out there and play. But on the last night, he did play drums for Richie Valens, and there's pictures that's going to be available this year at the Clear Lake, showing Buddy playing drums behind Richie, and Richie playing drums behind Buddy. and those will be out this year. Well, we practiced 2 or 3 days in New York before we got out on the road, and but Waylon knew Buddy's songs, and Carl knew them. We had a chance to go through all of them, and we actually in New York we learned really doesn't matter anymore. We learned I Got to Travel On by Billy Graham. He wanted to start all of his shows off with that song, and other than that, we just he'd just grab one of his songs and we'd do it. Yeah, right. It had just come out. Yeah, that was his new record. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Well, we had it worked out pretty good. Certainly didn't sound like the record, but was close to it. Carl was 17. He's the same age as Richie. They was both 17 years old. Carl was from Odessa, and I was helping a little rock and roll band there get started. Ronnie Smith, and I was trying to get him going. And when I had my Western Swing band there at that club in Odessa, and Carl played drums with Ronnie Smith. Well, we started out in Chicago on these old wore-out buses. They had been old passenger buses like Greyhound. Well, they weren't Greyhounds. They were some other line, and Trailways. Yeah, Trailways buses, and they were worn out. And we'd get on them, and the day we left Chicago, we only had a few miles going. We froze going 50 miles, to Milwaukee. And boy, after that, every other night we'd complain so much about freezing, they'd send out another bus from Chicago. Well, it was the same deal, And I think we'd had 5 buses when the guys got killed. We'd had already been on 5 different buses. And one night the bus broke down, wouldn't even run into town, and we had to get a school bus to take us to the next job. So they rented a school bus from the local town people, and then they'd meet us there with another old wore-out bus from Chicago. That was pretty ratty-looking buses, Certainly not like today's.
This concludes part 2 of the Tommy Allsup interview. Part 3 is available next.